wanted to encourage who are interested in getting some work experience while you're going through your programs here at Long Beach, definitely reach out to us in the Office of Workforce Development. We'll help you get placement. We'll help you find a job and or an internship. And so we have also workshops that we provide that will help you with professionalism, help you with your resume, some interview preparation. So really just want to encourage you all to seek out those services. We're here for you. And so I will pass it on back to Colin and we'll get the presentation started. So thank you.
Okay, great. Thanks, Veronica. I just wanted to say regarding the library technician program here, it's super easy to find information or get answers if you have questions. So one of the ways you can do that is just use Google and Google LBCC Library Technician program. And the information that comes up on our program website is really helpful. Alternatively, I think my name is plastered all over that website. So just send me an email and book an appointment and I can help you walk through some stuff. Or just come to the library. Some of you in the room here, help you out right here in the library, enroll into classes, stuff like that. So we're more than willing to help you out. Some of your professors are also on the call tonight. So definitely network, grab those names, and I hope that you get a lot of insight from the presentations tonight. And yeah, without further ado, I think I'll hand it over to Cathy, Library Director for Long Beach Public Library System, and then I'll fire up your deck for you too. Does that sound good?
Yeah, sounds good.
You want to introduce your team?
Sure.
I think you do a much better job than I would.
Sure.
Okay.
Sure. Actually, you know what? I'll let you go. Okay. Hi, everyone. I'm Cathy De Leon. I'm the director of the Long Beach Public Library. I started in July of 2022, but I've been with the city for a little bit since about 2017, but I'll go ahead and let my team introduce themselves.
Hi, everybody. My name is Cynthia Bautista. I am the Youth and Family Services Senior Librarian. I've been working in Long Beach since 2015.
I'm Elizabeth Cespuglio. I use she, her pronouns, and I am the Community Program Specialist at the Michelle Obama Neighborhood Branch.
And I'm Luisa, Leija. Hi, everybody out there and everybody here. I also use she, her pronouns. I'm the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Senior Librarian. I also do multilingual collections, so really long title that I'm still getting used to. And I've been working with the library system since 2017. It's about 6 years or something, 5 years.
So nice to see you all here. Thank you for coming. So we'll go ahead and get started. Yeah, that's me. So I have my notes here, so I'm gonna just go ahead and go through everything. So good evening, everyone. Like I said, my name is Cathy and I'm the director of the Long Beach Public Library. I'll start off by saying that never in my life did I ever think I would become a library director, let alone a librarian. I wasn't one of those kids that grew up thinking I was going to be a librarian. I feel like at many points in my life, though, I've been that little baby bird in the nest, too afraid to fly, and the mama bird came and gave me a little nudge out of the nest to teach me how to fly and try out my wings a little bit. So for me, those mama birds have been the mentors in my life who believed in me when I didn't, and without them, I wouldn't be here where I am today. So in my current role, I do my best to cultivate an organizational culture that's true to our values as a public library, inclusive of and responsive to all sectors of our diverse community, and create a culture that's creative, innovative, and joyful. I believe strongly that happy staff equals happy patrons. I'm part of our city's executive team, and I lead the Library Services Department, which has an overall budget of about $18 million. In the city of Long Beach, being our own department is great because we get a seat at the table next to police, fire, public works, economic development, and the health department. And it's my role to advocate for LBPL in terms of staff, budget, city policy, and safety. I work with staff to set the tone and the vibe of our library system and uplift the areas which we want to focus on, such as highlighting and embracing the diverse cultures and people of Long Beach. When stuff is out of whack in terms of safety or our buildings or with other departments, and my staff have tried all possible avenues, I step in and try to facilitate those conversations and get things unstuck. I advocate to my boss, the city manager, for what we need to be a high quality, community responsive public library. So my journey to this job started 23 years ago, though. In terms of my educational background, I was the stereotypical Asian kid whose parents wanted me to be a bio major and a doctor. As an immigrant child with a single mom, there was no time to go to the library. I never went to story time or participated in summer reading program. So during my freshman year at UCLA, I volunteered at the UCLA Medical Center, which at the time was famous for having 26 miles of corridor if you linked them all together. I discovered that I in fact hated hospitals and I didn't like being around sick people. And so this was a tough revelation for the kid who had grown up thinking that they were going to be on this medical path. So my first mama bird in my life was one of my college academic counselors who told me that to major in something that I was passionate about, and the rest, meaning a job, would follow. And so she was right. I ended up majoring in history and minoring in Asian American studies. And at the crossroads between graduation and thinking about work and a profession, another mama bird came along in the form of a good friend's mom and pointed me towards librarianship. I originally thought that I had wanted to be a history professor, but what I realized through all the research and time spent in the university library was that I really loved the chase or the hunt for information. I loved discovering the clues that would lead me to another book or to another fact. And at the time, I was also involved in ethnic student organizations and had become passionate about working with community and empowering youth and about public education. So with that epiphany, I pulled my grad school application for an MA in Asian American Studies and resubmitted my application to the Graduate School of Education and Information Studies at UCLA for its master's in library and information studies. I'll be honest, I did not love library school, but I knew that I had to get through it if I wanted to work as a librarian. And so I graduated in 2000 and I started working at LA County Public Library, which is a huge public library system. It's about 86, 84. It's a huge library system. About a month after graduation, and I was there for 6 years before moving on to OC Public Library. During my time at LA County, I tried every kind of librarianship that there was, children's services, adult services, audiovisual, adult literacy. I basically did everything except cataloging. And so at OC Public Libraries, I decided that I wanted to really dedicate my career to youth services and get to the level where I felt confident as a children's librarian. At LA County, I was a bit of a nomad. I kind of never really found my niche. I tried a lot of different things, never really felt at home. And so I kind of wanted to start fresh and restart my career and finally feel like I was good at something as opposed to kind of hopping around, you know? And so when I got to OC Public Libraries, I was a children's librarian for 7 years at the Los Alamitos Baltimore Library. And it was that feeling of working in the community, getting to know the families, being that children's librarian, got recognized at Costco by the kids that would run up to me. I would go to Yogurtland and get like mobbed because everyone knew Miss Cathy from, you know, Storytime. And so that was a great feeling. And I really enjoyed that a lot. And for me, I always think of myself, that's my library, I guess, sort of identity. I always, even though I'm a director, I still think of myself as a children's librarian.
Send me a picture of how much.
Let's see. Oh, okay. And then along came another one of my mama birds, my boss at the time, who basically said to me, you know what,
That's like what size truck.
I think you would make a great branch supervisor. And so I didn't believe her. But I thought, you know what, I'm getting a little bit, I'm also one of those, I tend to get a little bit bored after about 5 or 6 years, right? And so I said to myself, okay, I'll try, you know, if anything, the interview will be practice. And lo and behold, I got the job and I started doing it. And it turns out that I really loved it. I loved being able to be in charge of the whole building. I got to move the shelves around. I got to say like, you know what, we need to put up these kinds of displays. We need to have these kinds of programs. And for me, that was really empowering, you know, to be able to take that vision that I had of librarianship and turn it into, you know, like a real thing, right? And so I was there for about a year as a branch supervisor, and then I went to oversee the Westminster Library, which has a really large Vietnamese population. And so while I was there, I prioritized engagement with the city's Vietnamese community and designed programs to celebrate their culture and secured funding to revamp the Vietnamese language collection. And again, my boss at the time said, I think you're ready to grow. You should take a look at this job in Long Beach. And so in 2017, I threw my hat in the ring to take on my first administrative role, and that was as the manager of branch libraries for Long Beach Public Library. And so it was in Long Beach that I cut my teeth and learned to operate at that higher level, where my knowledge and expertise was tapped to do two things. One, support the staff in charge of the 11 branches of LBPL, and two, shape policies and procedures that would affect the organization as a whole. And having worked in public libraries on the front line for 17 years, I understood libraries backwards and forwards. And now in this role, I get the opportunity to write the playbook, determine the vision of the organization, and be the voice to advocate for larger changes. I learned that within a city the size of Long Beach, with close to 500,000 people, that in order to get certain things done, I had to reach beyond the library and form relationships and forge relationships with other departments and with community members. And so that's how in 2019, we were able to welcome our very first library social workers to support our unhoused population. And after 5 years as manager of branch services, again, another mama bird, our previous library director, chirped in my ear and said, I think you can do it. I'm moving on. I hired you because I knew you could replace me someday. And so, of course, I doubted myself and thought, that is a huge job. I don't think I can do it. But I took a leap of faith and let her nudge me out of the nest. And lo and behold, I now have the job that I never thought of that I could do. So my advice would be, if you love libraries, go for it. Let your mama and papa birds push you out of your nest. Take a chance and don't be afraid to push yourself out of your comfort zone. You never know where it may lead you. And who knows, it may lead you to us, the Long Beach Public Library, because we are always looking to hire enthusiastic, joyful folks who love libraries and community as much as we do. Thank you.
Slide the microphone a little closer, okay?
Okay. So I will turn it over to, looks like Miss Cynthia is up next.
Hi, everybody. I'm Cynthia. I'm the Youth and Family Services Senior Librarian. I started my library career when I was 8 years old. My mom was a library page, and every day after school, I would go to the library. And so I was bored, so they would, have me volunteer. And my first duty as a volunteer was adding barcodes to our library cards, because it was the first time that library cards were going to have barcodes and we were going to be able to scan them. Before that, we were stamping everything. So I was adding the barcodes to the first library cards in LA County. My first job after I graduated from high school was as a homework helper in the city of LA at the Florence Library. After that, I became a literacy aide in East LA at the City Terrace Library. I was there for 5 years, and it was a really good experience. I got to work with children that needed extra reading practice, and with adults that were learning to read in Spanish. I also helped a little bit with ESL and with family literacy. So that was a really great experience. And I actually got to work with Cathy when she was there during that time, back in a long time ago. And then after that, that was a part-time position. And after that, I applied for a full-time assistant. And I worked in two of our busiest libraries at Temple City and Rosemead, which were really busy. We had a line of people wanting to check out books all the way to like the back of the library on the weekends. A lot of readers, especially at the Rosemead Library. And then it was in about 2014 that the new East LA Library was opening up. So they asked me if I wanted to transfer over to East LA. And it was also a really great experience because I got to work in the Chicano Resource Center at the reference desk in the special collections. I got to do story time when I was there. So that was my first experience as children's assistant. And then they created a new department in LA County. It was the Emergent Literacy Department. And it was basically early childhood. And so I wanted to try something new. So I was like Cathy, I would get bored easily. So I always wanted to try something new. And it was a really good experience. I wanted to see what it was like to work in a system-wide department. And I got a chance to help libraries throughout the county open up their family-placed libraries, which was like early childhood centers in their locations. They had like toys available for the families. They would invite local early childhood resource specialists to come and talk about whatever their area of specialty was. And then whenever there was a vacancy, a children's librarian vacancy, I got to cover their story times. And I got to work everywhere from Lancaster to La Puente, Diamond Bar, all over LA County. So that was a really fun job. And then when I graduated during that time, I was going to library school as well. And when I graduated, I got a job at the City of Commerce, which if you don't know where it is, it's a tiny little city about 5 miles from downtown LA. The residents, I think it's like 12,000 residents. So it's the complete opposite of LA County. LA County is huge with 80 something libraries. City of Commerce is a tiny little city. And it was a very different experience. I got to like have my hands on more of the everything that happened in the library. I got to do a little bit of collection development, a little bit of like helping with policies, reviewing policies. I was in the website committee. It was, because it's a smaller system, you really get to do a lot more. And then I was there for 7 years and I loved it there, but it was a little too perfect. I got a little too bored because it was like, the same programming every year and the same. And so I felt like I was ready to move on, to try something new. And I applied for the senior librarian at Long Beach. And it was, Long Beach is kind of like the happy middle for me. LA County is too big, City of Commerce is too small, and Long Beach is just the right size, like Goldilocks. And it, Long Beach, there's a lot going on in Long Beach. There's always a festival, an outreach event to go to. I have, as Youth and Family Services Senior Librarian, I get to plan system-wide programming. We plan our summer reading program. We do our 1,000 books before kindergarten programming. We get to go to all the branches to run programs. And so I feel like it's a very exciting place to work. I get to, really get to know all of the branches. I get to visit all the branches. For about 5 years, I was also helping with the Spanish collection. I was a Spanish material selector for all the 12 locations. On my first day on the job, I asked like, oh, who does your Spanish ordering? And they said, do you want to do it? I'm like, sure. So then I did it for like 5 years, which was great. I loved it. But realistically, it was a lot. So I'm glad that, we have Luisa helping with that now. And I've also gotten to supervise literacy in my role in Long Beach, which was, a blast from the past. I got to do that in the county. So it was very nice to be able to help with that as well. And right now I am in the middle of planning summer reading. We've also gotten to do a lot of bigger events like the celebration of the young child that happened this last weekend. And we had probably like over 2,000 people attend our event. So I've gotten to work with other city departments and other city organizations to plan bigger events, which is really exciting. And then on my time off, I teach at Santa Monica College. So I do reference part-time on Mondays at Santa Monica College. I also teach a research methods class, and I get to do workshops there and library orientations. So I've tried a little bit of everything in the library world, but I have to say that to me, Long Beach is really like the best city to work at. I really enjoy working here. And one last thing, I am also president of Reforma, LA chapter of Reforma, and that's also been very helpful in my career as a librarian, being involved in outside organizations. I've gotten to network and meet a lot of people, not just in LA, but I would say like in the nation. During COVID, it was really helpful to have a group of colleagues that I could reach out to and ask, like, how are you guys handling like virtual story times? And like, do you have any policies to share or procedures to share? And so it's really good to network. So I recommend that if you can join any, outside, either an ethnic caucus, join a CLA committee, ALA committee. It's really helpful when you are looking for a job. You get to know people, and that's also been really helpful in my career. And that's me.
All right, I have notes too. So like I said, my name is Elizabeth Cespuglio, and I am the community program specialist at Michelle Obama Library. So I'm the only one in the group that's not a librarian yet. I've been in libraries for a long time. I guess I kind of started off my library career young, like Cynthia here, but mine wasn't nearly as fun. I was not a very good student, and in middle school, I got so many detentions and Saturday schools that they took away my elective and they made me work in the library because there weren't enough hours in the school year for me to actually make up all of that. So that's how I started, was as a punitive thing. And I really liked it. Essentially, I was just a glorified clerk because they wouldn't let me put books back. So I got to just scan things, and apparently I was really into scanning things. That was very fun. It was not really a punishment at all. But then I forgot about libraries for a long time. And that's always been something that my mom has utilized, the library. But again, like Cathy said, I was not a student or a child that went to story times or got to take part in summer reading.
I noticed Kim is
Fast forward, I was working in retail. And so completely not, library related. Where am I going here? Oh yeah. And so my like academic career is a little bit like meandering. My background is in visual arts. I have an AA from a private school in fashion design, which I never used. Then I decided to go to a community college, and I went to Riverside City College, and I was just trying to transfer to a university. So during that time was when I actually started working in a library as a page. And it was just one of those things where it was like, this is a solid job and I like it. It was not anything that, this isn't where I like got my love of like libraries though. Fast forward, I ended up going to Cal State Long Beach, and I transferred there. I ended up getting my BFA in sculpture, and let's see, where am I going here? Yes, okay. And then after that, I ended up coming to LBCC. So it kind of happened in an odd way though. So I'm working as a page, and this is in Jurupa Valley. So this is in like Riverside. I ended up really liking the library, and I became the teen services library assistant there. I was like, I still want to stay in the library, but I need to go to school. I'm going for sculpture. I have no like thoughts of becoming a librarian at all. But I was like, I'm not working retail again. Like, that is horrible. I'm not doing it. So I applied for Long Beach Public Library, and that was in like March. Fast forward to like September when I was starting school. They're like, do you want to come in and interview? And I was like, sure. And so when I started going to school for sculpture, I started working for Long Beach Public Library as a library assistant. And I worked at the Mark Twain branch. I did teen services there as well. And I really loved that branch. I really love that community. It is close to my heart, and I think it's because it's really similar to where I was when I first started in libraries in Jurupa Valley. The community there is pretty diverse. It's generally like low income. I actually felt like I was helping people there. I really enjoyed that. So I guess, so I've been with the city, the LBPL, since 2014. Fast forward, and I ended up at the Michelle Obama Library as a library assistant. During this transition, I finished my undergrad, and I had my senior librarian at Mark Twain Library really kind of helped me see how I could be a librarian. That was not ever something that I thought. And she was really supportive of being able to use my own skill set and being like an art major and like really utilizing that in librarianship to help serve my community, because the patrons there were really interested in art. And she was just like, I don't think you should rule this out. This might be something you want to look into. And that was kind of the push I needed. So I decided I wanted to become a librarian, but I had a horrible GPA. So I actually came to LBCC. I believe that was in 2020, maybe 2021. Yeah, and so I've never actually been here. So I'm like, oh, this is really cool. I've never been in person. I did it all online, and I'm gonna be honest. I decided to take library tech classes because I thought they'd be easy. I was like, I'm just trying to get to grad school, trying to get my GPA up. Let me take a class that will be, it'll be easy, and I'll just get through it, and it'll be fine. I loved it. And I really didn't think that I would, like I said. So I've been working full time since about 2017. So at this point, I literally just wanted to get that GPA up, and I like kind of resented the fact that I actually had to. And so again, going for the easy, I did not expect to enjoy the courses that I took here so thoroughly or feel like they were so applicable. Anybody I've talked to who said that they're interested in doing the program, I super recommend it before trying to put money out for grad school. Oh, I guess I should fast forward. I'm in grad school now. Right, thank you. The classes I took here for free, I feel like were worth more money than the money I'm putting out for grad school. Not to say you shouldn't do it because I need the degree, but it was much more directly applicable to what I'm doing. And I do mean that genuinely, like the skill sets and the attitudes of the people who are working here in helping to shape the outlook for working in a library just felt so much more connected to reality than graduate school. Graduate school just felt it does feel very much so in the realm of theory, which is important too, but I'm not going into that. You know, I don't need as much of that. I wanted things that were practical. When I started here, it was right at the beginning of the pandemic. I started San Jose, let's see, a year after, so still pandemic. We barely ever talked about how the pandemic was impacting like library services. That was the first thing that we talked about in the courses that I started taking here. Like it was that semester, it was like, hey, we need to be talking about this. This is happening, right? This is impacting communities. So just that kind of a disconnect. So I'm almost done with my graduate degree, thank God. I have one more class left, so I'll be done in December. And I got my full-time community program specialist position with the city in 2017. And I feel honestly really lucky to have that. I feel like it's one of the few full-time positions where I'm kind of doing the same thing as a librarian. And I feel really lucky to be able to do that. So in my position, I oversee a dual use space. So it's one part makerspace, one part family learning center. And so I oversee the staff there and the programming that we provide for the public. So it's a lot of like balancing the day-to-day people coming in, as well as sort of like planning things a little bit longer term. And I honestly really love it because I get to use the skills and my background to kind of form programming for the public. I would say like my sort of like advice is that there are so many different types of like libraries or different positions you can have within a library that like really explore things. I've never worked with like cataloging or metadata, and I found I really liked taking classes on that. I've never used it in my position, but I feel like having been exposed to that, I can understand how maybe I will get bored of my position in a few years and want to move to something else. And I really feel like that's kind of given me these like tools to be able to go, oh, I would like to pivot and try this other thing within librarianship. So it's still so broad. But I like working for the community. I like where I work. I like the patrons in North Long Beach. And I think that like at the end of the day, it's like, if you don't like people, don't go to public libraries. I'm just gonna say that. And like, I don't know why people do that, but there's plenty of other library like areas to go into if you don't want to do that or be public facing. And that's kind of the like amazing part is that there's so many different like niches within that. Yeah, I think that's all I have.
Can I just get a quick time check? Okay, cool. 35. All right. So I'm Luisa again. I work as a senior librarian for diversity, equity, inclusion, and world languages. That's easier for me to say than multilingual collections for some reason. So librarianship is my second career. I actually worked in the nonprofit field before this. And let me just back up to tell you a little bit of how I grew up. I grew up in Northern California in the Bay Area. My parents were migrant farm workers from Mexico. They did not have a high school diploma. And growing up, it was always like really ingrained in me, you know, go to school, get your education, you know, you don't want to get left behind, you need to support yourself. One day, you know, I was the youngest of 4. My grandparents lived with me. It's like, it was a very like classically migrant experience. Spanish was spoken at home. I learned Spanish as my first language. And I really feel lucky that I had that experience, because to me, representing and serving people of like migrant populations, serving people that look like me, is why I'm doing this work. I think about like, is the work that I'm doing, could it have served and benefited my mom or my dad or, you know, my abuelita, my abuelito, my grandparents? And I knew that when I went to college, I wanted it to mean something for my community. I thought I was going to be a writer. In my house, there was always stories, even though, you know, we didn't grow up with a lot of books. I also never went to the library. The bookmobile actually was my first introduction to libraries. And that was, always thought it was so cool when a bookmobile would come and, you know, I'd run over there with my grandma and, you know, hop on the bus. And then back in the 80s, we used to have a dial-a-story line. I don't know if anyone remembered that. There was dial-a-story. So you'd call in and you get read a story over the phone. And it was like a way to outreach, you know, into communities. And I love that thing. I would call it over and over, like in a day, just like always listening. Because it was just like culturally, like in the Mexican culture, there's so, and indigenous cultures, like there's so much oral storytelling, like communicating of history, of traditions, generational, like so much information. So even though my parents weren't quote unquote educated, there was so much, like so much rich knowledge like conveyed to me through these stories. And that's one of the reasons why I thought, okay, when I go to school, I'm going to be a writer. And I actually did, I got an MFA in writing, and I have like published some poems. But I was the first in my family to go to college. I went to community college. I had no idea what I was doing. Like I bumbled around community college to community college. And finally at one of them, I was like waiting tables. I was actually doing waiters on wheels before there was a Grubhub or like Postmates. I was like driving. I was like the only woman on this team of men, like getting orders out of a walkie-talkie using a paper map. And finding my way through like San Jose and all over Silicon Valley. And I'm like, you know what, I really need to get serious. Like, I really need help. I don't know what I'm doing. And I finally found a program at West Valley College called Puente. And it helped first generation college students make that transition to a four-year university. And I was an okay student. I feel like, you know, I was smart, but in my high school and where I went, like there wasn't really that much investment in brown kids. I mean, to put it plainly, there was just like, oh, okay, you guys are gonna do like technical, you're gonna be in the service or like labor, vocational. So, you know, and so there wasn't really that push. And when they really, you know, they took me in, and it was in that class, it was the class offered a counselor, and you were able to fulfill your college English requirements through Puente. So I did my college level English, and it was in that class that I first, actually not that class. I was around that age when I first read my book, a book written by a Mexican author, a Mexican-American author, and it was Rain of Gold. And that book changed my life. Like it was stories like I had grown up with. It was stories from like two people who grew up in Mexico during the Mexican Revolution and then migrated to Mexico and then found each other and had a family. That's the whole sort of like plot outline. And when I read that book, I was just like floored that a Mexican person could be a writer and published in the United States. And it took me like 19 years to see myself reflected in a book, to see my family experience reflected in the book. And I get emotional just thinking about that because it's such a big deal to have books that reflect our identities. And I think that is why, I'm sorry, I'm like getting so emotional. I didn't think I would.
You're doing good.
So it's, you know, hearing and reflecting the stories of our communities is why I'm doing the work that I'm doing today. It's why I was working in nonprofit. I worked with youth. I felt like, you know, if like I majored in Chicano, so let me give you my background. I ended up getting into Berkeley, like surprisingly. I went to UC Berkeley. I majored in Chicano studies. And all of this was through Puente. So if there's anybody out there listening to this, definitely look into your EOP programs. Look into these programs that are available in community colleges. I thought that I was going to work at a community college. That's how much I love community colleges because it's such an amazing place. Some of the best teachers I've ever had were at community college. And I got a bachelor's and 2 master's degrees now. So that says a lot about the dedicated, passionate staff that work in these spaces. So I went to Cal, I did Chicano studies. I was majoring with an emphasis in Chicano art history. I was able to take some classes with some amazing Chicano artists and writers. And then I graduated and I started working in the after school field, and I became a coordinator, a manager, a director. I was a teaching artist. And then I ended up moving across country. I moved a little bit with my partner. I had a child, And then I thought I was kind of getting bored. I'm also a person that gets bored really easily. I like a new challenge. And that's the great thing about working in libraries is that once I got into libraries, I was looking for part-time work when my son was little. And we just moved to Long Beach, and my sister actually told me, hey, you know, with your background, I think you would really be great in libraries. So I gave it a shot, and I was looking at like the demographics in Long Beach, and I saw, wow, it's like 45% Latinos, Spanish speakers. And at the time, I think there was just one bilingual program that Cynthia was doing. And I was like, Loteria. Yeah, Loteria. And I thought, you know, I would love to do a bilingual story time. And, you know, that's kind of right up my alley. That's what I have been doing in the past, doing like storytelling workshops and writing workshops. And so we did that, and it became like one of the top attended programs in all of the library system. And then with that, we were able to advocate for more bilingual programming. And then we had our first big like Latino Heritage Month celebration. We opened the Billie Jean King Day Library. And from there on, there's just been like so much momentum in having diverse programs at the Long Beach Public Library. I think with Cathy's arrival as our director, and just like so much groundwork that has been laid with like generations of you know, librarians that have been making the path to now, like we're pretty much celebrating all of the cultures system-wide. And there is an investment, like there's a role that is equity, diversity, and inclusion, which is huge. It's a new position. And in this position, I'm basically building what it is that it's going to look like. So it's a big opportunity. I feel like we're using a lot of data to inform what kind of issues we need to take on, what we need to advocate for in terms of what our community's needs. We're looking at building a Tagalog collection now. We have a robust Spanish collection. We have a Khmer collection at the Mark Twain Library branch, and now we're also looking at the Tagalog collection. So things are changing, shifting. It's a really exciting time to be working in, I feel like, in the library field in general, because there's so much change. And with the new generation of folks coming in, we have that power to mold what the future is going to look like. I think sometimes people say, oh, libraries, like, do people still go to libraries? Like, we get that question a lot, like, oh, as a librarian, does that mean you just get to, like, oh, how fun, like, how nice it must be, such a relaxing job. You get to sit there and read all day. And I'm like, have you been to Main Library? Did you know, we had to close recently? Like, there's so much. No, we don't get to sit there and read books at the desk. And if we do, we're probably like putting some stickers or something on it. But yeah, we're processing books. But there's, yeah, like in library school, I remember we talked about recently, like the jobs that will be the future jobs in this field are yet to be created, because it's changing so rapidly. And although, and a library it's kind of like a community hub, like a community center. And that's the way I saw it when I first walked in. I'm like, oh, okay, so this is like a community center. Like, I know what to do here. And so I was able to transfer those skills from my previous professional life over to library life. And that's been really good. And then about getting bored, I also saw that the library was a place to bring all my passions, my passion for writing, my passion for community, for social justice, for helping people, for connecting, making partners like with other community organizations, with other city departments. coming out and doing talks like this in the community. All of those things are things that I love, but I know that if I were to get bored, there's always another place to jump to. Like if someday I just get tired of working with the public, I could go on the back end, side of things and get into cataloging, or maybe jump to academic libraries, or special collections, archives. Like there's so many subsections. I mean, there's even comic book librarians, music librarians.
Wine librarian.
What?
Wine librarian.
Wine librarians.
Yeah.
Yeah. So let me see what else I had in my notes here. Yeah, I started also with youth services. I really loved it. And I thought I was going to school to be a children's librarian. And sometimes I'm like, I use this tagline, I'm like, I just wanted to be a children's librarian. Like, I just wanted to plan story times and make felt animals and stuff, and sing songs and but it's been a really amazing sort of transition, and I never thought that a job like this in the library system would exist. And now I get to stir the pot professionally and get paid for it, which is fun. And I wanted to just say also that for folks out there who may identify as like BIPOC, people of color, the field needs you big time, because it's like, it's lacking diversity. And as demographics have shifted in this country, like we need librarians to help bring stories that reflect our communities, that reflect us. So wherever you want, wherever you're interested in, whatever your passion is, there's a place for you in the field. Like you don't have to fit in any mold. Like, you see all of us here, we're all different, and you can bring your passion. Like, Liz, you're super creative and so talented, like artistically, and that is totally like everyone, it's crazy too, because everyone at Long Beach and the library system, so crazy talented, such good people. It's such a joy to work with all the staff. We feel really lucky to work among some of the best people, I feel like, in the city department. But yeah, you can totally make librarianship into your own thing. So I think that's it for me.
So we have some questions in the chat for you. And if you have any questions as well, just go ahead and raise your hand and ask. Are there any questions right now? So Edith in the chat is asking about the importance of networking. And that's in relation to academic and career support. So she was asking Cynthia, maybe you could, and then any of the rest of you, if you have insight, expand on the importance of networking, and maybe provide some examples on the way you networked or advice on effective networking.
Yeah, so I mentioned some of our ethnic caucuses. I belong to Reforma. There's also Apala, the Black Caucus, Kala. Those are always, good to be a part of. I also help out with the California State Library Association. I actually, in 2019, was asked to help coordinate a Loteria event during the night trek at the conference. And it was my sister, she's also a librarian. My mom's fault, because we were all there after school. We coordinated a Loteria event, and they gave us 3 tables during the conference in the hall of the conference. We had over 100 people show up to our event. So every year they ask us to go back and like do another Loteria. So this year I'm going again to host Loteria for the 3rd time. But participating in CLA, the American Library Association, just getting to know, the other librarians around the country. There's also, I belong to the, what is it called? The Children's Children's Services group. What is this, like the SoCal? I forget what it's- SCLC.
Oh, yeah.
SCLC, Southern California Library Consortia. Yeah, so they have like different groups of librarians that get together. Before COVID, we used to get together every other month in person. And it was just whatever children's librarians wanted to get together to talk. And like, it was a good place to just like go in and vent. A lot of them would go and vent about like changes in their, library, or like, how are you guys, handling this issue? And that was always really helpful to like get to know other children's librarians. We also like to share ideas with other library systems. And so we'll copy, like somebody's putting together a cool program and we'll copy it. We had an eloteria program. It was elotes, which means corns, and loteria as our first program for Vida Latina. We had to like close the doors because we had like over 100 people in our meeting room. And so yesterday we had a group of librarians from another city visiting, and they're like, oh, we're going to copy your program. So, we like to borrow ideas. So it's always good to see what everybody else is doing, what other systems are doing. But also just whenever you can go to a conference, there's the free conference coming up. Is it next week? Random Glasses. It's a binational conference that happens in San Diego. Pre-COVID, it used to be one day in San Diego and one day in Tijuana. And I also got to network during that conference, and I got invited to present at the Mexican Librarian Association conference a couple of times. And so that was also really, really fun and a really good experience, just learning how they do things the other side of the border. Like, it's a very different experience. And so we both learn from each other. And so that's kind of like the networking experience that I have, just helping out, participating whenever I can, volunteering for whatever event is out there. And just, like being able to like have a group of librarians on my phone that I can like text, like, what are you guys doing about this? Or like, how are you guys handling this issue? Or do you have a copy of this policy that you can share with us, because we're thinking of implementing something like that? That's always been really helpful.
There's also, if you want to go like the opposite route, not really, but there's like Facebook groups that you can find that like people are super helpful on there, and you'll see things that people have posted, and like people are very welcoming. I would say definitely join any of the like associations. If it's too expensive, take a look and see. Most of the time they have scholarships, or especially if you're like a paraprofessional or just starting in, they'll have like a lower, basically like association fee and a student fee. Those are really good. You get on those like mailing lists and basically just volunteer for things, and you'll meet people. I am really bad at networking, and literally if I ever meet anybody at any of these conferences, they all know Cynthia. And I'm like, how do you know Cynthia? Like, it's really crazy how small library world becomes once you kind of like insert yourself in it.
Yeah, that would be my advice too, just in terms of work. And this is kind of applies to work in general, right? My philosophy is always never burn a bridge, because the library world tends to be really small. And so if you're looking for a job in one system and you're going to go, or you're going to move across the country, chances are there is a way that I'm going to be able to find out who you work with and talk to them. So, it's that's what it comes down to. It's really, it is this really, really small world, but in a good way, because we share ideas, because you don't have to reinvent the wheel all the time.
We always want to help other people.
Yes.
I feel like it's like you don't get into librarianship to get rich, right? Like you're not doing that to like become a millionaire. Usually it's because you want to help other people. And I find that really goes even to like your coworkers, like where it's like, oh, I'm definitely down to help. And so that like communication goes outside of your own system, where it's like, if you are a helpful person, other people will know it, because they'll talk, they're always like, ready to lend a hand or do what they can, or they've got great ideas to share. And that kind of gossip will kind of go through like, and I'm hesitant to use gossip, but basically like the world is pretty small once you kind of join in. So I say definitely like join associations and just kind of introduce yourself to people. We're all awkward. So
Yes.
everyone in the library
That's
is
true.
awkward. So everyone will be like, oh, hi, nice to meet you. Except for children's librarians, they're a whole separate breed. Like, I think I'm the only one who's
I
like
don't
not
think so.
children's.
I
Oh
think we're
yeah,
Also awkward.
maybe, but they're a little bit more open.
You guys doing okay? Do you have any questions? Okay, we have another question. So can you give us specific examples of how you work with community organizations, schools, other partners to promote diversity and inclusion in your outreach and programming?
Ooh,
Yeah.
What does that actual collaboration look like?
I guess I could, like,
Well, we've
I know
had a partnership in the city of Long Beach. They have different health equity groups. So we've been working with, for example, with the Black Health Equity team to bring programming that is, like of interest to the Black community to our libraries. And we held our first sponsor event last December, and that was in partnership with the health department. I also I'm a committee member for the Long Beach Early Childhood Education Committee, and I get to help with like program planning for that organization as well. And so I help with like the kindergarten festivals, making sure that that there's some bilingual access, like access for Spanish speakers in these events. And so that's I think how I've been able to work with other city departments and local organizations. I don't know if you have anything else.
yeah, I feel like for me, it's about understanding what your library currently offers, who your community is, and identifying those gaps, right? So it's like, what is it that we're missing? What is it that we're not hearing, to really make our services even better, right? And so for us, I'll give the example of something that I've been involved with is Long Beach has a huge Filipino American community, but at the city level, you don't see a lot of us. There's no Filipino elected officials. There's actually only one nonprofit in the entire city that serves Filipinos. And so for me, growing up, I knew that there was that community, and that's how I identify as Filipina. And so knowing that, I was like, I know they're out there, and I know that there's a big population of them here. What is it in library that we're not doing? And so I had to cold call. Like I actually just went and like called small businesses that I knew were owned by other Filipinos. And I said, hey, do you want to get together for coffee sometime and talk about how we could maybe do stuff for the community? And that's actually how the Festival of AAPI books started. We're doing our second one, which is going to be on May 13th at the Billie Jean King Main Library. And so the first one, we had about 200 people and 20 something authors. This coming one, we're anticipating somewhere between 300 and 400 people with 34 plus authors. And it's been really wonderful because all of those programs, really, they've been planned in partnership with community. It's a little challenging sometimes because they, folks in community don't always understand like what it is that library can do, or sort of like, because we're a city entity, we have sort of rules we have to go by. But it's really just building that bridge with them and saying like, okay, and kind of problem solving and thinking like, okay, how can we make this happen? And so that's where that event came from. And it's been really kind of an amazing work. And it's put me in touch with so many parts of our different community that now people are coming to us and saying, that was a really great event. We see what you're doing. We want to be a part of it. So that's how it's worked for in that respect.
And I just wanted to add to the way that Long Beach City College partners with the library is that we actually host computer classes, computer literacy courses at the Michelle Obama Library for that community, which is in the North Long Beach area. So those are free computer literacy courses that anyone can take completely free. And so we go out there, our faculty are there, and they're teaching those courses at your site. And so, and then also with partnering in events like this, hosting this panel, and also inviting you all to our hiring events with the city of Long Beach. So there's many ways that, we collaborate on various things, yes.
Yeah.
Oh, question. Hi, go ahead.
I just wonder, how do you get started in volunteering? to at your local library. I was talking to Colin before the class started, and there is a break from the first course to the second, and I was wondering how to stay involved.
Sure.
Yeah,
Do you wanna talk
I
about
can talk about that. I used to do volunteer coordinating for the library. There on our website, there are, I think it's ways to get involved under visit. There's the visit tab. It's on the far right-hand side. There's a drop-down menu, and it will say volunteer opportunities, or get involved and then volunteer opportunities. And there's a list of the volunteers, types of volunteers that we're looking for. And there's also a link to an application form. So you can apply that way. You can also visit your local library branch, and they'll have paper applications if you prefer that way. And then it's just about like waiting to go through the process and seeing if there's an opening, and you get to be onboarded, fingerprinted, and then you start, working your volunteer position.
Yeah, there's also, we also have a really robust Friends of the Library group. So we have amazing friends. So all public libraries have an advocacy group, right? Or almost all. And so ours is the Friends of the Long Beach Public Library. And so the Friends are also an entirely volunteer organization, and they're fantastic. They're a group of library advocates. They raise money for the library. They're the ones who host the little book sales that are in all of the branches. And so they always need a certain level of help, just to, restock books or whatever it is that they may do. But they're a great organization. We love our friends. So, yeah.
I would say definitely go to like a branch library. I'm a very big advocate of the branch ones just because they're so specific to the communities, and there's a little bit more maybe control to a certain extent, or maybe more freedom actually. And befriend or just start chatting up the staff there, because they're usually smaller, right? And they'll give you a lot more maybe insight on if they had an adult, a volunteer there, what they would be doing. And that can also kind of, if you're like, I'm really interested in doing, story times with kids. If you're not at all, I'm really interested in helping. Like, I'm always looking for a volunteer who knows how to sew. If you know how to sew, I need your help, because we have a monthly sewing workshop that's very busy all the time. And if you know how to sew, please volunteer with us. Like things like that. So it's like, I always say, just connect with them, and you'll kind of learn to who needs what kinds of things. Because sometimes you could volunteer, go through the whole process, and then you're just shelving books, which is, and that's not fun for anybody. So just ask.
Literacy is also always looking for volunteers. We're gonna start fighting for volunteers. Literacy, we're also looking for ESL tutors right now.
You have a question? Actually, I wanted to make a comment. My name is Ruben Amador. I'm the instructor of the Library 271 Work Experience class. So for those of you who are enrolled or would like to become enrolled in the Library Technician program, the Library 271 offers you the opportunity to not only volunteer, but intern and complete a certain amount of hours, and you earn up to 4 units that work directly toward your certificate. That's another way that you can actually get into the volunteering. And at this point, you're also earning college credit. Okay.
Are you guys game for one more question? Are you guys okay?
Yeah.
It's a question about continuing education. Do you find you need to find ways to refresh your skills, or are there certain things that you learned and have been taught that you wish you had taken a course on? How do you engage in continuing education?
I'll admit, I wish there was a continuing education requirement like there is for teachers. There is not in librarianship. You get your degree, you're in the door, that's it. And so really it becomes a part of your own personal professional development. If you want to advance, if you want to promote, you sort of have to take it upon yourself to go to conference and to really, and that's what conference is for. Yes, it's for networking, but really, the purpose of it is you have libraries all across the state, and or if you were to go to like American Library Association all across the country, showcasing the programs and the work and the policies that they've developed or whatever. And so it's going to those conferences where you're able to refresh your skills and kind of get re-excited about certain things. And so I'm a big fan of conference. I wish we could afford to send everybody to go every year, but unfortunately we have to kind of pick and choose a little bit. But I think it's a great opportunity. You always leave with at least one or two great ideas to be able to go like, they're doing it that way, like we should do that here. And so, yeah, that I wish there was a continuing education requirement.
There's also, through, I think, Library Journal, they offer they do a lot of professional development courses called the California, what is it? Libraries Learn. They do a lot of really good, they do really great programming, actually.
Yeah.
Webinars and courses.
Yeah, their courses are great. And Library Juice also does like more like critical, like through a critical lens. So anything like more like social justice-y, through a social justice framework.
Info people.
And hit and miss. I'm gonna be honest. Info people could be a little hit and miss. Some of them are kind of better
Their
than
children's
others.
stuff is better than.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and then also I would recommend, like, if you are doing something really cool in your library system, present, like submit a proposal to present at like CLA or ALA or somewhere local, like Reforma. I presented at Reforma National over Zoom on bilingual story time. And that way you get to get some really good like presentation skills, and B, network, and attend the conference and see other ideas, like learn other ideas. So that would be my recommendation.
I would say too, for hard skill or maybe more like technical skills, like get out of your comfort zone a lot. I feel like I've seen that it's very easy to kind of get comfortable with the only tools you've been using and not trying other tools. And then as things change or progress, you sort of are left out of the loop a little bit. I'm thinking about, when COVID shut everything down, all of a sudden we're all trying to figure out how to, do things on the computer. Right. And so it's like, ooh, okay, maybe we should have gotten a little used to some of these things like earlier on, sort of being like a little bit of an early adopter with certain technology skills. I'd say sort of be open to like learning something that you don't think is necessary. I guess because you never know when that could be sort of part of your regular, I don't know, day to day. I just think about it as like exercising your brain in a different way. So the skills, technology skills are the things that I think like you need to brush up on. But if you're kind of inserting yourself into the library world by, reading like journals, being part of like different groups and stuff, you'll kind of hear things coming down the bend and sort of, look into them, but it is sort of your own professional development.
Also, there are some, towards the end of the slide deck, there are some links to a few resources and a QR code for anybody in the, that was our organizational chart, just to see, so you can see. Like,
I know.
And then, so just some resources, types of library specialties, scholarships, apply to everything. There is a QR code on the last slide, so you can take a picture of the QR code and then you'll have the slide deck.
Okay.
Associations always have really good connections for scholarships and things like that too.
Yeah.
Definitely make those connections.
Oh, and I'll have to say, like, I was really lucky. I got an ALA Spectrum scholarship for library students of color. And through that, and they have a partnership with the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign. And if you get both, like if you get into the University of UIUC and you get a Spectrum scholarship, you get your tuition free. So that is really good to know if you are a person of color. And there are I'm sure there are other opportunities, other scholarships out there. So yeah, definitely take a look at those scholarships.
Can I ask a question? I think read an article about New Library in Barcelona. It's the Marquis Barcelona Library. If you ever heard about that, it's a new type of library, more like a working place, where the creative, dedicated spaces for people who would like to work, and not only for the community, but also for people who have some businesses, freelancers, talent people. I just wonder about your vision of the future of the library, because it's a changing rapid area, as you mentioned, right? In terms of technologies coming all the time, the artificial intelligence, all these things. And I wonder how the library plan to survive and develop under such a big pressure.
Thanks, Brandon.
That's a good one. I know.
That's a good question. I'm like, ooh.
I feel like I'm gonna just jump in on this
Yeah,
as
go
like,
ahead.
I feel like if you start thinking about a library as not being a place for like physical like materials, but start thinking of it more as like it's like a thought process of like connecting people with information, and that information doesn't need to be this like physical or like tangible thing, but it could be connecting them to resources. So just in the same way that like computers are in like the internet or in the library, right? Connecting people with the tools they need, I feel like is sort of the more like abstract vision of a library. So constantly being open to hearing what do people need to connect to information, to resources, to whatever it is. Meeting those needs is, I think, the future of the library. Not being, committed to it has to be this way because it's looked this way for the past 50 years, right? Like in the space that I'm in, I'm really lucky to have our library foundation fund us to have a lot of different technologies. I mean, when I first came in, the 3D printers were like super new and novel, and maybe they're much more common now, but like we still have people constantly coming in and prototyping things for them to, work on their own like small business plan. We've got like computers with the full Adobe Creative Suite. I have people in there all the time who are using our resources as a way of like having their own business, right? For graphic design, just even applying for jobs, doing video interviews. So I feel like it's not necessarily just the technology, but also the ideology of what it is that we're doing and helping connect them to these things.
I think libraries are constant. If there's anything that is true about libraries now is that change is constant, and we do have a lot of staff that, are a little resistant to that. And that's something I think as our new employees come in, as new people enter the field, is that you have to have that mindset that things are always going to change, that there's always going to be new technology. When I first got my library degree, my dad was like, "Why are you doing that? No one goes to libraries anymore. We have the internet." And here we are 23 years later, and book publishing is actually on the rebound. Print publishing is actually exploding right now again. And obviously there is still a need for us, right? And so I think what it is exactly what Liz says. Amidst all of this technology, at the heart of it, people still want to connect to people. And that's what we are. The public library is a place for people to connect. I just read the story on NPR that there's a loneliness, what is it?
Oh,
The loneliness,
Generation.
no, like
library, right? You can like, I have words.
no, there's like a loneliness epidemic in the country,
Oh,
right?
yeah.
That it's affecting people's actual public health, your well-being,
Right.
and if there's anything that libraries are really good at, we know that, yes, books are important, but we know that our future is in providing opportunities for connection. So it's providing public programs, it's being responsive in that way, getting resources into the hands of people who, I think the perception is like my husband, he teaches 6th grade and he's been teaching or 5th grade. He's been teaching for like 20 years. And, the perception is that, oh, young people, you must know how to use a computer or whatever. They know how to, his kids know how to do this, right, on their phones, but ask them to type, ask them to, type up a resume, ask them to actually use a keyboard. It's a whole different story, and so there's always going to be, I think, if we listen and adapt, there's always going to be a place for us, you know. And what's great about Long Beach, who knows, you know, we may be the last bastion of public libraries, because people, it is such a joy to work in the city because our residents here really understand the value that we bring. They love their public libraries. I hear it every time, as you know, be in my role, people tell me all the time, people come up to me on the street. I'm much more public facing recently than, you know, it feels a little bit more like I've come back to my children's library roots, except I'm like, you know, I wear a blazer now. And so people come up to me in the corner and everyone's got a story to tell me about how the library changed their life. I was walking down the street, I ran into a police commander that I had just met at a meeting. He was like, hey, did I ever tell you, I grew up in the Burnett Library and my grandmother used to always take me to the dinosaur books, and I love the library. And so as when you work here, you start to hear those stories about how libraries changed lives. And so I think when you think of it that way, that's how we'll survive, is we keep changing lives, you know. So.
Well, I think on that note, I'll thank you for your time, your inspirational stories. Cathy, Lisa, Liz, Cynthia, thank you so much. There's goodies here. There's also some bags back here with fun swag. Of course, we have to have library swag. So we have that available for you guys. And you can see they're hiring. So take some time, introduce yourself, start that networking. And thank you guys so much for coming. I appreciate it.
Opening.
We do. Oh, yeah.
Good job. Yeah, everyone. I need to stop saying that.
May the force be with you.
Oh, yeah. I like that.
So I was like the only, you should have been at a llama then today. I was the only person. I was like.